we planned tonight was a panel discussion with some people that know Steve. As you probably heard a little earlier, they know him pretty well. And they've all been introduced. And so I'm just going to be up here as the referee watching and passing the ball to the next person. So somebody that's been with Steve fishing on the boat, doing amazing things, and having a hell of a good time for 30 plus years is a fellow that everybody here knows, the Florida Keys Outfitters. Keys Fishing School, and a guy who I met when he just escaped Georgia with his brother. I don't know if they were bootleggers up there, they were in the whiskey business, but they showed up in Miami with a beer business. And so he's an authority on Steve Huff. His name is Sandy Moret. So Sandy,
well, you know, it's funny. I have two little kids. I have two little kids on the side.
Drew's here.
Steve, 3 kids, yes. You're not on the side right now, but 3 kids. So Steve and I used to fish the Gold Cup tarpon tournament. You won that, Andy.
5 times.
There's count, right? But not while we were fishing.
Rematch.
So,
You gotta put that mouth right on that thing.
so this was before cell phones and all that shit. So, Steve and I were fishing the Gold Cup. I was staying at Chica Lodge. It was like $87 and David, Drew's brother, and Drew would come down and they would hang out while we were fishing the tournament. And Chad and Dustin, Steve would bring them up in the morning and they'd hang out at Chica. I'd give them $5. $5. They go out to Allberry's bait store, which is right in front of Chico, where the whatever is now, and they go buy $5 worth of shrimp. They buy $5 worth of shrimp. They go out on the dock at Chico. They'd hand line grunts, and they cut the grunts up. Okay? They cut the grunts up and drop them down, and they would catch crabs. They'd catch blue crabs. They take the blue crabs, take them back to Allberry's, and trade them for more shrimp. This is where these guys got their fishing problems from. Anyway, at the time, Steve had a station wagon. I don't think there are any pictures left of the station wagon. It had no windows or air conditioning. Or floor in most of it. But that's what we would fish in. We'd go fishing every day. And he had, his rain gear at the time was different. He mentioned something about us going fishing one day and getting blown out. I remember that. And Steve wore this poncho. He had an army poncho. And he would wear this and he would look like Batman. We're driving the boat. He's driving the boat. Rain pouring down and everything. And he had a poncho. They were making Henry Lloyd rain gear at the time. They were making all kinds of rain gear at the time. But Steve had a poncho. And I have decided to bring these ponchos back in at Florida. just for this, we forgot.
Somebody did it. I got you.
So I ordered 1,000.
1,000.
One size fits all. And here's the new Steve Huff poncho.
Hold it up, Steve. Yeah, there you go. Shanard will love that.
Give him a haircut.
You can love it.
Come on, throw it back in your bait well. Anyway,
Quality. Class act.
okay, no funeral. I can't tell you how he made things happen. He made it happen. He made it happen. You had to hang in there, but sooner or later he made it happen. And he did it time and time again. Whoever caught 7 permit today? You gotta hang in with Steve. I'm happy to do that. Whoever won 3 gold cups. Happy to have it. Whoever gaffed their guide and pulled him back into the boat. I did that a couple times. Anyway, I just lifelong friend, and thank you very much. I'm happy to be here with you, baby.
Love you, man.
Love you.
Sandy, I figured you would have something in that bag when you showed up, and it's not a Henry Moret visit. Next up is a king-size character who probably is the most interesting part of the Huff family that I've seen in my few years of observation. And he is not going to get pulled out of the boat very often. But it was a good thing for Nathaniel that I think Chad was along that evening when that tarpon, after 3 or 4 days, got a little tired, and Chad was able to put a little iron in it. So, Chad, why don't you let us hear a few tidbits about one of your favorite old guys who likes to go fishing. I think so.
It's all, okay. Yeah, it's always hard for me to do these things. Not a great public speaker. My good friend Nathaniel here is fond of labeling me as laconic.
I'm surprised you knew what that meant.
I still don't, I'm not entirely sure. He just thinks it's funny, so I've gone with it.
I'm sure later you'll find that he's quite loquacious.
Pretty similar words. It's not like this unguided.
Just don't know any of this.
I was trying to figure out. A lot of people are going to tell you about what my dad meant to this profession, what my dad meant to fly fishing, to this thing that we love. So I was trying to do something different. I was trying to figure out. I want to tell you what he meant to me. I was talking to Paul earlier today, about, what I should talk about. And he was telling me a story about his dad. And he grew up with his dad, working for his dad in the newspaper business. And he worked for his dad for a long time. And his dad taught him a lot of things. And once he went to work for someone else, he almost felt sorry for him. Because he could see things that other people couldn't see. And my dad I started thinking about things that I learned from my dad, good and bad. Some of you people on stage here know that my dad and I haven't always, we've kind of butted heads over the years. But I think back on what my dad, where my life has taken me, and there's one guiding principle that he always stressed to me growing up that was a big factor on the man I am today. It would come in various forms like, son, if there's a will, there's a way, or you can do anything you set your mind to. When I think about it, I always hear it in his voice in my head. Well, when you're young, you don't really know what that means, or even believe it, frankly. You know, it's like, yeah, whatever, Dad. If that were true, I'd just build a time machine and fast forward until I was 18, you know. But I was a curious kid, and I wanted to figure things out and figure out how things worked, and he knew that. Yeah. I remember when I was little, I loved Lego blocks, you know. I used to love to build little machines with them, stuff with them. They had little gears and axles and motors, and I don't think I ever used the directions one time to build the things the kit was meant for. But I love building things, using my imagination, and solving problems. And for my birthday one time, I don't know, I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and different family members and stuff gave me money, and you know, at the end of it, I had like $100, which, you know, in 1977, that was a lot of freaking money. You know, it was probably a whole day's work for my dad at that time, and much to his chagrin, I spent it all on Legos. And he was furious, and he wanted me to take them back, you know, but, you know, it was Toys R Us in Miami, 2.5 hours away. It never happened. He thought I wasted my money, but eventually he got over it. But some of the best times I remember as a kid were on those few days that my dad had off from fishing. He would sit on the floor with me, and we would build something. I remember one day we set out to build just a specific machine to solve a problem. We used to, I don't know if you guys had those things you put you could build with blocks and little holes and tracks, and you put the marble in, it would run down the tracks and all the way to the bottom. You put it in again, you watch, you know, you can build different tracks and stuff. Well, we sat out, we said, he said, why don't we figure out a way to build a machine that will, once the marble gets to the bottom, it'll pick it up, bring it up to the top, and put it back in, and then it'll run through the thing again. So we sat there over, I don't know, several days, tinkering with it, you know, trying different things, trial and error. You know, at the end of the time, we had a concept that actually worked and did what we wanted to do. And that to me, when I was a kid, was like, it was like so rewarding to do. Solving that problem, I mean, that's probably what set me on the path. I don't know if many of you know, but to be an electrical engineer. I can remember shortly after that, around the same time, I guess, him not being satisfied with the flat skiffs that were out there that were available, and trying to find one that he liked, and he couldn't find one, so he drove to Miami, and he bought a brand new Sidewinder ski boat with all the glitter flake and the windshields and all that stuff, you know. god awful looking thing. He brings it home one day, and you know, of course, we're all excited. Something shiny in the driveway. And we didn't have a lot of money, and he backs it into the carport. And the first thing he does is get a jigsaw, and he saws the entire cap off the top of it at the rub rail. Slides the whole fucking thing off into the side yard, cuts into a bunch of pieces to fit in the garbage can. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, and you thought I wasted $100 on that? I said, at least I could use those over and over again. But my 7-year-old mind couldn't comprehend it at the time, but I was captivated by it. I would spend countless hours out there trying to help, which for anyone who's ever held a flashlight for their dad was probably more aggravation than help. I was just fascinated watching how he worked and how he attacked each problem methodically and stayed with it over several months. And eventually, that glitter flake ski boat turned into a badass flat skiff, and it's in your. There's a picture of it in your, by the way, in your book there. And to me, at that time, and Freddie Archibald actually started an old boat business based off of that concept. But to me, at the time, it was audaciousness of cutting up a perfectly good boat because he had a vision of what it could be that he believed in. He repeated this same thing, you know, a few years later with his first Dolphin Super Skiff. He even let me help a little bit more during that process. But the same confidence in himself is what made him successful in tournaments with Sandy. He was just some young punk from Marathon trying to, you know, fish with the big dogs in Almirada at the time. And, you know, I think he went for, 50 cents in your first Calcutta? 35 cents at his first Calcutta in the Gold Cup. But he said, you know what? I'm going to show these guys. He believed in himself. This example of setting your mind to something and believing in yourself is powerful. It got me through electrical engineering school at the University of Florida. It got me a successful career where I owned my own engineering business for 20 years and raised an amazing family. And it gave me the audaciousness to change careers in my late 40s to become a fishing guide in the Everglades. And then at 50, to move to the Keys and be a guide in the hardest place on the planet to compete in tournaments and actually win, you know. And I know people look at our family and they want to know, you know, the secret of how we are successful at what we do. You know, my dad won 3 Gold Cups with Sandy, a bunch of bonefish tournaments. Dustin won the Gold Cup, I think, twice. Won the Holiday 3 times. Won a permit tournament with Andy. I don't know where he went, but you know, I just won the IGFA permit tournament in October for the second time, and like 2 weeks ago, won the Sugarloaf Showdown with my son. The truth of the matter is, you know, I'd like to say we've got something to figure out that nobody else does, but the truth of the matter is, my dad taught us both, Dustin and I, by example, that if you believe in yourself and use curiosity and imagination, there's nothing that you can't accomplish. There are countless examples where that is being reinforced over my lifetime. So like Paul said about his dad, he felt like he had a huge advantage over other people because of the lessons his dad taught him. You go into these tournaments and they're not easy, you know, and out of 25 teams though, there's maybe, I mean, Nathaniel will probably agree with this, there's maybe 4 or 5 teams that really believe they can win. The rest just want to make, you know, a respectable showing, and so right off the bat, you're already ahead of 75 to 80% of the people in the field, and you haven't even left the dock yet. So, my dad didn't have the easiest childhood, and I don't think he got a lot of people. He had a lot of people who believed in him when he was young and moved to the Keys from Miami to be a fishing guide. But somehow, along the way, he learned to believe in himself, and he passed that belief on to my brother and I will be eternally grateful for that.
The powers that be from the organization have said that because they know my late night driving isn't so good, they think everybody here is going to kind of fall asleep on the way home. They want to speed this up. Of course, when you're hearing stories like this, we want them to keep coming. So I'm going to leave it up to everybody, the stories that we have left. And so right now, you heard a midget description of the gentleman that has taken the IGFA, International Game Fish Association, which is a heck of an operation that started a long time ago with a guy named Mike Lerner who had women's dress shops, and he fished all over the world. I would say Jason Schratwieser has popularized the IGFA, and he's turned it into a every guy type place, which I'm very happy with. And he's got some pretty good stuff on Steve and Jason. I know Jason's having some very bad stuff with his family right now, but he got down here. He said, I'm going to be there Monday, so we're really proud of that. And so let's have, I'm not going to try to say that name again.
Don't worry about it. It's a terrible one.
Schratwieser.
There, close enough.
Is this on? No. Well, first of all, I am here with family, so 2 brothers and somebody I consider a dad. Chad, that was just beautiful, by the way. I mean, that was just amazing. I want to piggyback on to something that he said. He talked about what he did, you know, with that, getting that ski boat and cutting it up. And he said this in the program. Open up that program. Just do me a favor, look at it for a minute. You'll see him and Sandy Moret in the tartan. But more importantly, I want you to look at what Steve is wearing. He has a pair of cut-off shorts and a gold chain. And I brought that up to him one time. He says, that was my guiding attire for the better part of 20 years. I was a macho little shit. I just want to say a few things about Steve and what he means to me as well. I mean, obviously his angling accolades and guiding credentials speak for himself, but I came to the IGFA in 2003 as a conservation record, and I was actually one of the few people there that fly fish, like the flathead fish. And over time, you know, we had this annual Hall of Fame induction ceremony. You get to meet people that, you know, are, you know, legends that you got to see either in magazines or on TVs, the Chicos, the Flips, whatever. But there was always a guy that I had heard of, who's Captain Steve Huff, but you never saw him anywhere really. You know, he wasn't on TV, not that I saw. You really didn't find anything about it in magazines, and you damn sure didn't find him on the website, you know, or the internet or anything. And I can remember he was being inducted into the IGFA Fishing Hall of Fame in 2010. It was October. It was after Hurricane Wilma, and our librarian at the time, who had passed away a year ago, when it was a big part of the IGFA, calls into my office and says, I have Steve Huff downstairs. touring the museum, would you like to meet him? And I was like, well, would I? And I was more starstruck to meet this guy just because I had started fishing the Everglades and wanted to learn it really well, and I had heard through, anybody who's anybody, that this guy knew everything from Biscayne Bay, the Everglades, the Keys, all the way to the Marquesas and beyond. And I'll never forget meeting you then. You had that boot on your foot, you had broken your leg after Hurricane Wilma, and you were nice to me. And you looked at me and said, so I understand you don't know why, but.
No, I have no clue.
I don't know either. He's like, I understand you have a biology degree. I'm like, that's true. He's like, well, we should go fishing sometime. And it wasn't too long after that, we were at an unfortunate circumstance. Actually, it was Jose's celebration of life at the IGFA. Nathaniel was there too. Or were you there, Nathaniel? You were there. And he says, we're gonna go fishing. Let's pull up your calendar. And he says, okay, well, this is so big. And he says, I don't care what the weather is, we're going fishing. Sure enough, the day I was fishing, I'm driving down Alligator Alley, and like my truck's being blown side to side, rain lashing against it. Meet him at the diner, he's holding court. If you've ever fished with Steve, he eats breakfast there every day, talks to the same guys, same people, holding court. And we go out there, and it was just the best day. I was just in awe. But the really cool thing about Steve, besides, how much fun he is to fish with, is that he really wants to get to know you. If you spend a day or days or years over time fishing with Steve, you get put on the couch. There is not a question he won't ask you about anything in your life, at all. And this has really been some of my fondest experiences, just being able to have these life discussions with Steve and being able to get to know somebody and truthfully get to love somebody. Nathaniel and I for years have secretly called you Dad. And it's just been a wonderful experience, and I thank Steve too for introducing me both to his great sons, but also this guy next to me, and until they upgraded to a much bigger and better gas man than me with Chad, I rode along with Nathaniel and Steve for, God, I don't know, it had to be at least 3 or 4 years, something like that. And it's a grind. You're out there, and Nathaniel always had this habit of hooking fish like an hour before dark. That was his specialty. So it was. He had black belt for that shit. He would just make you be out there all night. But throughout the course of the day, the conversations that we would have amongst each other were just incredible. And one of the conversations that came up all the time was I'd been dating somebody for a while. I'd been divorced earlier on in life and things like that. And Steve had met what become my wife Diane, and so had Nathaniel. Man, they were just on my ass. Just like, what's wrong with you? Just get married. It got real bad. Man. You guys were on my and like just it was like I got mad a couple times. But I thought about it, I acquiesced, I got engaged, I let them know when I was riding around the boat, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll be in the wedding, what is it gonna be? I said, this is my second wedding, we wanna do something small. They're like, fuck you. When is it we're gonna be there? And I was so proud to have Steve there and Nathaniel there. Steve, you've just been an amazing person in this whole crazy sport of fishing, but to me, more importantly, you've been a friend and somebody that's always been kind to me, took me fishing, blabbed way too much about where fish lay up and where they can be at certain times of the year, to the point that I feel guilty if I ever launch from Everglades City.
I better never see you there.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm going the opposite direction. But I just want to say, in addition to all your other amazing honors from BTT, IGFA, and here, it's well deserved. You're a fantastic person, and I love you dearly.
Thank you, Jason. We were having a little meeting before this all started with the most efficient person in the museum, Sarah Foster. So we're having this meeting, and our next speaker is sitting there on Zoom, and he said, I want to ask you one thing. Is there any rating on this
That was
talk
me.
tonight?
That was me.
Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Get that
I
out the
thought your
way.
neighbor was the guy who said it.
I paid attention, though.
I'm gonna say you were. Anyway, Nathaniel Linville doesn't kid around. I mean, there's people that go fishing, and then there's Mr. Linville's approach, which is, let's not catch a few of them, let's catch them all and make sure they're big. And he and Steve put on some awesome, as you heard, late night performances all over the Everglades. And I think you'll enjoy hearing from Nathaniel. And if you can't get him here, he's got a fly shop down the road in the Keys. He's probably never there, he's fishing all the time. But if you're going by there, you might stop by and say hello. Nathaniel, please.
Thank you, Paul. Steve, it's a real pleasure to be here, celebrating this with you. You know, we talk pretty regularly, and one of the things that's come up a lot in our conversations is, you know, you asked the question, why are people doing all this stuff for me? And I think that it says a lot about you, that despite all these people telling you constantly how great you are, that being humble is so ingrained in who you are, that it's still confusing to you sometimes that this amount of attention would be paid to you. You know, I'm typically nervous when I talk in front of people, but it's interesting now because I'm talking about you. I'm a whole lot less nervous, so you should be nervous. I'll say this: there were some insanely epic late night tarpon fights. There were tears, there was blood, there was not very much sleep. There was a ton of stuff that happened, and sometimes in the privacy of my own mind, I'll just remember something about that decade that we spent doing that. But the thing that I think is worth saying now in this context is to say publicly what I think about you in the sport. Because I'm a participant in the sport. I fish and I try to do it really well, but before I was able to do it, I would classify myself then and now as a fan of this sport. And as a fan of this sport, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of people who are heroes and revered. It will come as no surprise that not all of those people live up to the hype. You do. I think that what makes you special is you took a profession that was, I mean, fishing's not a sport necessarily unless you make it one. And it's not, guiding is not a profession the way that being a banker is in 1960. Until you come along and you decide that you're gonna outwork everyone and you're gonna define the career of being a shallow water skip guide. And that's what I think you did. And I am someone who came into the sport much later and still was a direct beneficiary of that, and indirectly as well. I think your passion for your clients and what they do and your ability to mold your efforts around what they want is a skill that is so much a part of you that you may not even practice it. It might just come as naturally to you as breathing. But I've seen what you've done for me as an angler, and I'm weird. Like, I have really specific stuff that I want to do. and you made me feel normal enough to keep doing it. And you shaped yourself around like my dreams and my hopes for what I wanted to do. In all those years of not succeeding, it never came up. The one thing we never talked about was maybe we're both like, just shouldn't be doing this. We talked about maybe we're crazy. We talked about maybe this is a hallucination we're having. We talked about pretty much everything else on the planet. But we never doubted that what we were doing was worth it. And I think that when I think of you and your career, I think that I'm just one of many people that you've done that for. And I appreciate it, not as your client and as one of your close friends, both of which I am, but as a fan of this sport. And that's why I think you're a big deal, and that's why I think it matters, and that's why I love you, and thank you.
I just want to mention, after hearing Jason and Nathaniel and Chad talk about this, a sport has rules. If you're fishing more than 20-pound tippet, you're not in the game. You're not playing the sport. The IGFA sets the rules of the sport. If you don't play this game by the sport, don't tell me about your 350-pound blue marlin that you caught, okay, on
Preach, Brother Sandy,
100-pound
preach.
test, or your 80-pound trevally that you caught on 100-pound test. You didn't catch shit. I'm serious. People don't understand it, and it's up to guides, it's up to fishing guides to teach their anglers, this is how you do it. You don't fish 30 pounds for tarpon. You don't fish it, you're not fly fishing. So that's all I wanted to say.
Everybody at this table has heard that talk, not once, but numerous times. Well, the evening is winding down, and we brought in the Mariano Rivera of the Huff family. This is, in my estimation, a pretty good closer, although Chad was impressive. Nathaniel, never heard you talk that long without expletives. That was
I threw a
fabulous.
couple in there, they were
No, I
just
didn't.
soft.
Ears are bad. So, we saved the best for last. The man in the picture that you saw earlier, I was hoping I was gonna address him as the fishing politician, as a city councilman of Marathon, but he dropped out of that. So, Dustin, take us home.
Well, that's a lot to live up to there, Paul. But I don't know that I'll be as good as any of them, but I do know I'm terrible at this. That I'm talking about my best friend, so I'm here just to share a quick story about the man we're here to honor, my dad, Steve. When my brother Chad and I were kids, our version of family vacation wasn't Disney or the beach. It was piling into a super skiff, disappearing into the Everglades with Dad. Those trips were magic, long days, wild places, and I can't imagine getting a better education anywhere else, at least for what I intended to do. There was one part of those trips that my dad dreaded. It was rigging our rods. We tangled or broke off, which as young kids was about every 10 minutes. One day in the middle of the glades, after rigging for the 100th time, he finally had enough. In the most Steve Huff way possible, he looked at us and said, all right, that's it. This is the last time I'm gonna show you how to do this. If you break it off, you don't learn how to tie it, you're fucked. You're on your own. I can promise you, Chad and I paid close attention after that. That day he taught us the bimini twist and the uni knot, and maybe the most important lesson of all, how to make your own way, take responsibility, and don't expect anyone to do the hard parts for you. And that's been a theme with him my whole life. Dad has been my mentor, not just in guiding, where a standard is something the entire sport recognized, but in how he treats people, how he carried himself, and how he lived a life built on integrity, patience, and respect. But there's another side of him that means more to our family. The grandfather, or pops. Even with a schedule that would flatten most people, he has never missed the most important moments in his grandkids' lives. Birthdays, holidays, school events, and especially games. What people don't know is that he'll drive 3, 4, sometimes 6 hours in a single day to watch them play, to be in the stands and to make sure he was there for them. No matter how far the drive was or how late he got home or how early he had to wake up the next morning to be back on the water, he showed up. That kind of dedication, that's what we all remember. Dad, you've always showed who I am as a guide, as a father, and as a person. And tonight, as you receive this award, I can't help but be reminded how lucky Chad and I have been, not just to learn from you, a legend, but to learn the world's greatest dad and grandfather, to learn from the world's greatest dad and grandfather known to all as pops. Congratulations, Dad. You deserve this more than anyone you know. Thank you for the knot lessons, the miles on the road, and the example you've given all of us to follow. I love you with all my heart.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we adjourn this party, which I think you've probably gotten a pretty much in-depth, I mean, Monty Burke is here somewhere. He's written more miles about stories about Steve Huff than anybody on the planet. Sandy's figured out Steve Huff is polled around the world, I think 4.5 times. And I think you've heard a pretty heartfelt discussion about a gentleman that is not only something special, he makes everybody he deals with something special. And I have to tell you that earlier this evening there was a piece of jewelry auctioned off, and it came about with an idea that I got sitting around in the front of Steve's house. He has all these little green shutters all the way around the house, and every little green shutter has a little tiny snook cut out of the shutter. Well, it's cute, it's beautiful, and it tells you what he thinks about snook. Well, the insurance man shows up, and he says, you know, Mr. Huff, I hate to tell you, but we can't insure your house with those shutters because there's holes in them. I'm not going to tell you what happened after that, but that insurance company is not dealing on Storter Drive in Everglades City. So out west, we don't have bow ties and neckties anymore. We have a thing called a bolo tie. And I thought, you know, Steve Huff, he probably wouldn't wear it, but if I got him one, at least I'd feel better about it. So I talked to this friend of his over in Pensacola, who's a magician, as you can see, is an artist, and he was brokenhearted he couldn't be here tonight because he had a little trouble with airplanes not flying. But fortunately, we got the stuff here before he got here. So, for the last half a year, we've been working on creating a Steve Huff snook. I don't know if it can be insured or not, but it's a Steve Huff snook bolo tie. And I want to bring it down and give it to Captain Huff. You don't have to wear it, I just thought you'd like you to take it. They are brokenhearted.
Don't
They
pull it up
couldn't
too
be
tight.
here tonight with me.
It's called a snook, baby.
Let me say something. I have to say, this is like the most amazing, having these guys up here. They're my friends, but they're my brothers. We have laughed so hard. We have cried together. We have bled together. That's the truth. You can't imagine spending thousands of hours in a small little bathtub floating around in a swamp will do to people. And sometimes the language isn't pretty, but stuff happens in a little boat like that. It cannot happen any other place. And sometimes it's a bonding agent between the people that are in the boat. And if you're all of the similar ilk and mind like that, you become one. You become one in your thinking, you become one in your crying. And these guys are my blood. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thank you very much to all of our panelists. What a moving discussion that really was. That doesn't happen at all these events. It's a very special thing to see it all come together. So let's have a hand for everyone on our panel, please. In closing, I want to thank everyone for being here and make this all possible. We have a whole bunch of people who did a lot of work to make this whole event come together. And thanks to all of you, the dinner committee, our auction donors, our gold table sponsors. But I have to say, most importantly, we have to say thank you to Steve, because it's because of those few people like Steve that gives the American Museum of Fly Fishing a reason to exist and to be here to carry on these stories and preserve the artifacts that give witness to the wonderful things that these real stalwarts in our sport do and have offered to all of us. So I thank Steve Huff. Thank you.